and seeing how they all did. And over time, our potting, oh, we're live. Hello, everyone. You missed the first part. Too bad. Our potting soil really did hold up over time for the plant. So yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it is an investment, but it is well worth it. So what we have is a soilless potting soil. It's mostly peat moss. It's got some compost. It's got perlite. But the thing about our soil is because it has so much of the peat moss in it, it's a blessing and a curse a little bit. So peat moss, once it dries out, you've got to really work to kind of rehydrate it, because if you just pour water on it, if it's really dried out and you just pour water on it, it just goes like this, just cascades off. So you want to make sure you're keeping that soil hydrated. But the great thing about it is because it drains so well, because of the peat moss and the compost, it drains really well. And that's what you want for healthy roots, is that good drainage. So this is pretty damp because it was an open bag out in the rain, but you can see how it doesn't compact and it's got texture to it. So it's not gonna, it's not modeling clay. I can't use it to sculpt. It's not gonna stay there, but it's got texture and body to it, but it also has lots of little twiggies in there, and that helps with drainage. So that's really important. The perlite also helps with drainage. The potting soil also has an organic 555 starter fertilizer in there. So that's handy too. So it's not going to burn anything. It's going to be kind to those new young roots. Okay, any questions that we've talked about so far? Yep. Okay. So now we kind of get to planting our container pots. So usually what I do, the one thing to think about too is the ceramic pot, once you fill it with soil, unless you're the Hulk, you're not going to be moving it a lot of places. So think about where you want it to be in the yard and probably do your planting there. That way you're not struggling to drag this thing, across the yard. We do have some great dollies, wheel dollies, that are super. They hold up to like 500 pounds. So if you think it's something you want to move a little bit, I would recommend getting a dolly, setting it on that dolly to start with. It'll just make your life a whole lot easier down the road. When you start with your pot, I usually fill mine, usually a good 2/3 full, the very least, if not fuller. Because the main thing about potting soil, when you pot in it, and through the years, it starts to shrink. Have you guys ever looked at your pots and went, where did all my soil go? Well, the plant's using the nutrients, it's getting washed out. So I like to start a little higher to begin with because it gives me a little more longevity with that pot. You just have to be a little careful when you start watering it. So if you start with your potting soil too low, you end up with your plants too low. So start with your potting soil high, and you'll thank me for it later when you do that. So once you get your potting soil in there, this is fairly moist, like I said, because it's been out in the rain. If it's dry, you want to wet it down first. So get your watering can, get water in there, get it to where it's not sopping wet, but moist. It has a good texture, good feel to it. It's very important that you wet your potting soil before you plant. The other thing to be cautious of and be aware of is when you plant the plants that you're going to use, make sure they've been watered too, because you don't want to pull out a real dry plant and then stick it in the soil. Just make sure they're both moist when you start planting. Be much better for you, the plants, everybody's happier. The other thing, we didn't bring it up here, but you can also, while you've got your soil in here, this has, our potting soil, like I said, has that starter. But if you want to add some of the all-purpose food, I think it's a great idea. That all-purpose food is the 744 all-purpose. It's a great meat and potatoes food. So I like to take a little of it and just mix it in with my potting soil when I'm getting ready to plant. And that way I know it's got a good head start with some food. As it grows, it's going to have food in there to pull from. The all-purpose is a slow release. So it's not going to burn those roots. We don't have to worry about it burning anything. So then we get to the fun part, which is picking out. Yes, sir. So the 744 is the all-purpose. It's an all-natural purpose food for anything in the yard. Trees, shrubs, lawns, perennials, cactus, natives, whatever you got. It's a great food. The 644 plus 7 is primarily for fruits and vegetables. It's got the higher calcium in it. So that calcium, we need that, especially for tomatoes, peppers. It's great for fruit trees as they're developing the fruit. So the 644 was developed mainly for fruits and vegetables. If you've got it, there's absolutely no reason you couldn't use it in your container as well. There again, it's a slow release, all natural, so it's not going to burn. So both really good foods. It just depends on what you're fertilizing, I guess. So then we come down to picking out what we want in our container. I just grabbed a few examples. Oh, bummer. One of those days. So since we're kind of focused on fall, I thought I'd kind of hit more on the fall plants. A lot of, like, I've been looking at my containers I have right now. They look really good because we've had that rain. Some look horrible, but some look really good. And it's just like, oh, do I really want to take this thing apart and put something new in it? But the answer is yes. And now is the time to do it because we want to get things rooted out before the really cold temperatures come. So it's really important, even though it may break your heart to pull some of those annuals out, it's time to do it. It's time to think about fall flowers, the cool season flowers. And of course, mums are a terrific fall flower. I love using them in my fall container gardenings. They'll bloom probably almost 2 months. By the time you get your big blossoms, and there's always little itty bitty blossoms down in there too. So they bloom a long time. They do not stay evergreen in the wintertime, but that's okay. You can either pull them out and go, I'm tired of looking at you. I'm going to pull you out. Maybe I'll plant you in my perennial bed because they actually make really good perennials. They will come back year after year after year. They get bigger, more beautiful. So don't be afraid to put them in your perennial beds, your raised beds. If you don't want it in your pot, just move it. It'll be fine. So usually, have you guys ever heard the whole thrill, fill, and spill concept? So the whole thrill, fill, and spill is something tall in the center, because that's your thrill. Ooh, look at that. The fill kind of covers the space in between, and then you have your spills. And I brought up just a few different ones that you could use. There's ivy, works really well, evergreen, so super easy to use in pots. I use it a lot in my pots. I do occasionally, it can get a little overgrown, and what I do is just go rip it out. I rip part of it out, and ivy doesn't care. So, but it's a great evergreen to use in your pots. This is a variegated vinca, another nice one for kind of filling, softening the edge of the pot. This one's evergreen as well. Same concept, it can get a little aggressive, but I just go through occasionally and pull parts of it out. It doesn't care, it's happy with that. This is a regular vinca. This is Vinca Major, variegated, bigger leaf. This is Vinca Miner. Has a really pretty purple flower. Usually we sell this for shade, but I have found in my pots, especially with other things that I'm using, if I use it just on the edge as kind of a softener, it doesn't matter if it's in full sun or not, because it's getting shaded by other stuff in the pot. So I've had really good success using the vinca and the ivies as spillers on there. And I like the fact that they're evergreen, so they're always giving me color. We also have right now, oh, this is a little Austrian pine, Alberta spruce. I needed more coffee this morning before I came. So this is a little Alberta spruce, super cute to use in pots because it is so slow growing. It's going to take a long, long time for it to outgrow your pot. I mean, it grows like a ½ inch a year. So fun to use in the pots because it can just be your center that's always there. And then you can plant around it. So maybe you'd rather have some pretty violas around it. So you put the violas around it. And maybe in the summer, because these will kind of peter out about May. They don't like the heat. So you switch it, you pull these out, and you put some Vinca in or some petunias in. So you're keeping your center, your thrill, the same, but you're changing other plants in there. And even if they're grown together, yes, you can pull out a plant or two and replant, and they'll be fine. So, you know, the other thing about this would be cute at Christmas time because you could put little lights on it, little battery lights. It'd be really cute. So you can use different thrills. I have, see if it'll take me. So this is a boxwood. Boxwoods are evergreen, animal resistant, kind of take care of themselves. They don't, you can shape them. So maybe you wanted to topiary it and make it more of a cone or make it a ball. You can certainly do that with boxwoods. That's why they're kind of fun that way. So you can use a boxwood in there. Or this is upright rosemary. It's another great evergreen. Super to use, animal resistant. You can pick some of the foliage off for your Thanksgiving meal. So it's another fun one that you could easily use in there to kind of give you your thrill in the center. I am going, what was the other ones I had picked out? I think I'll use the boxwood. So I'm actually going to plant. Let me show you one more combo, just while I'm thinking about it. So if you're more into succulents, if you travel a lot, if you don't want to be outside watering or fussing and mussing, I recommend using succulents and euphorbias in your containers because you can easily go a couple of weeks without watering and they'll be fine. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. This is actually evergreen as well. I love this plant. I probably have 8 in my yard right now. It gets a bract on it, and it's like a chartreuse green in March, and it's beautiful. You look out your window and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so bright and pretty. And it stays on there for a long time. That bract flower on there stays a long time. I've had them even with like 2 feet of snow on them. And they're fine. You just kind of brush the snow off and they're like, okay, here we go. So super hardy, animal resistant plant to use. This is the rainbow Ascot Euphorbia. You could mix it with, they call it a blue spruce sedum. This one I like because it drapes. So this could be you could put it on the edge and it'll just kind of drape over. And you've got your Euphorbia in there, really cool. The other thing you can mix in is this one is red carpet sedum. It's also evergreen. I mean, nobody looks at these plants and thinks they would be winter hardy, but they are super. If you got a hot sunny spot, these are great to put in. Like I said, if you don't want to water a lot, these are all great. Evergreen, so even in the wintertime, you've got color sitting there on your deck or your patio, whatever you want. So you could do those in there. The other cool thing about this plant, as we get colder, it actually gets more color in it. So you can see it's got a little bit of pink on the edges. As it gets cooler, it will get more pink. And it kind of has this pink, blush, green, cream. It's just a really attractive plant. So you can use succulents as well. You could even stick like an agave in here and put these around it. So a lot of options for you there. Any questions? No. Okay. So I'm going to put together a pot just so I can show you the steps on the best way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and use this boxwood. And you can see it's moist. I'm not putting a dry plant in. And I'm going to be making a mess, but that's okay. So when these come out of the pots, you can tell the roots are they've full grown into that pot, definitely. So you need to loosen it up. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can take a little knife or a trowel and run it through there to loosen up the roots. So the main thing is you want them to be loose so that they don't just continue to grow around themselves, that they actually want to grow out. Some people are like, oh, isn't that abusive for a plant? They actually need it. So it's okay to loosen it up, get it nice and loose in there, especially on the bottom, because we want those roots to fill out. So right now, before I plant, I'm just going to kind of stage it in my pot to make sure the arrangement's how I want. So that if I find I don't like something, it's easier to move things around before you've got them all planted and dirt filled in there. So I'm just going to stage it right at the moment. The other thing to think about is if your pot is seen from all sides, you probably want your thriller in the center. If your pot is only seen from one side, maybe it's up against a wall or a patio, and you're not seeing the back side, I like to move it towards the back, so it gives me more room up here to kind of fill in. So I'm going to put him in the center because I don't know yet. I'm going to go ahead and use my mums. I could use, if you have a lot of critters that come through. Now that I'm dirty and handling, I'm just going to throw that in there. If you have a lot of animals, javelina, squirrels, pack rats, boxwoods are very animal resistant. Snapdragons, also very animal resistant. So, you know, you might think about putting a snapdragon in there. We do have some that are more dwarf snapdragons. It'd be real pretty in there too. Or if you wanted, you just take a couple snapdragons, put them in the center, and those are your thrill. So, you know, if you've got critter problems, come talk to us because there's some things you would not want to put in. Usually mums are pretty animal resistant, although I have seen deer come through and eat the tops. They leave the plant, but they eat the buds. It's like, thank you very much. Boy, you can see this one. See how rooted that is? So that definitely needs loosening up. A lot of times you just got to get your fingers in there and not be afraid to loosen those things up. Oh, there it is. As far as colors, you know, go with what you like. There's no rule book, I think, when it comes to putting colors together. I've seen pots that are very monochromatic that aren't really my cup of tea, but they get them done and they're actually very pretty. I see pots that have every color in the rainbow in them. There again, I wouldn't think to do that in my head, but they look attractive. So it's just kind of, what do you like? What colors do you like? So this is still sitting up above the pot level, but that's okay, because I'm just kind of still messing around with it. I think I'll put some pansies in. And I brought these too to show you guys. So these are beets. Yes, actual edible beets. What I like about them is the color of the foliage is so cool. And later on in the season, they will actually form beets. I've had my grandkids come through and pull them out, and there's beets there. I'm like, ooh, we can eat them. They're like, I don't think so. But I like the color that they bring into a pot. The other one I like to use is Swiss chard. Swiss chard has beautiful big leaves, red stems, kind of orange stems. So that's another really attractive vegetable you can use. Kale, is also really good. But I like the color that it gives me in there. And I matched it. So these are pansies. Come in all colors, shapes, sizes, whatever you want. The great thing about pansies and violas is they bloom all through the winter. There again, they can have snow on them. And you're thinking, oh, no way. And the snow kind of comes off and they're like, oh. But as soon as the sun hits them, they just perk right back up. So pansies are a great cool season plant. They will go through the winter for you. Into the spring, they just don't like the heat. So by the time we get to May, they're like, yeah, I'm done. Unless you've got it in a shady spot that I've seen pansies grow through the summer. So, but I liked those colors together. Isn't that kind of cool? Nice color in there. I could take a Vinca and kind of stick it at the edge. So when you're putting in your spillers, little trick I learned, I can get this loosened up here, is to actually put them in at an angle so that you're seeing it really softens that edge. A lot of people put it in right when this one it's probably okay because it's pretty drapey. But if I took the ivy, if I put it straight up, it doesn't make much of a statement. But if I set it in there at an angle, it's going to start to drape over faster. So it just occurred to me, I still have my store radio on and people are talking and I'm like, ah, too much. So I kind of like this, so I'm going to use that kind of as my spiller. I probably would need one in the back too to kind of even it out to make it nice and symmetrical. I'm going to throw in a few more of my beets. Oh, look at this. The roots are even purple. Isn't that cool? Sorry, takes so little for a gardener to get excited. I'm just going to throw a few in until I kind of get the look that I like. A few more pansies in there. These 6-packs, they are usually pretty root intensive, so you want to loosen those up pretty good. And they're okay, they can handle it, so don't be afraid. So these beets, well, the foliage on them will get taller, so it is going to kind of fill my space in there as it matures. The other thing about beets is the foliage is actually as nutritious as the beets. So if you do a lot of shakes, you know, kind of the nutritional shakes, you can throw beet foliage in there. Actually very good for you. So this will fill in quite nicely. I've got these little guys on the side. I could put him more in the front if I wanted. There again, how are you viewing it? Is it from all sides? Is it from one side? How are you going to see this from outside your window or on your patio? So you can play with it till you actually get it. You're like, okay, I like that. So that's why I like to not plant right away, just kind of fill in and see how I like it. And I kind of like that, so I would probably go with that. I might move this back a hair. I can see this is turning into more of a one-sided pot as I go. But that's the great thing about planting. You can change it as you go, which makes it nice. The other couple other examples I could have put in there, I'll show you guys. So this is an ornamental kale. Very decorative. I love the colors in there, just so rich and full. Really works nicely with a lot of the purples to go in there. This is a little viola. Main difference between a viola and a pansy is the flower size. You can see the violas have a little bit smaller flower than the pansies do. Pansy has a big flower. And violas, I frequently find reseed. I'll find little ones all through my yard. So kind of fun that way. These, if you do put these in, if you have javelina, heavy squirrel, pack rat, don't use these. I love them, but unless you have a way to protect them or the critters can't get to them, don't put them in because they love ornamental kale. You know, every year I think, oh, I haven't seen a javelina in 9 months. I'm probably safe. You put these out, and next thing you know, you got javelina in your yard. You know, it looks like a bomb went off. So great plant, but if you have javelinas, just don't even do it. Not worth it. If you have javelinas, but you want another nice, fun little plant to fill in with, this is Dusty Miller. Super little plant. This is so versatile. It goes through the cold, takes our winters just fine. But the amazing thing is it takes our heat just fine too. So it takes 100 degrees temperatures and goes, yeah, I don't care. I'm good with that. 20-degree temperatures, yeah, I don't care. I'm good with that. It does put a yellow bloom off in the summer, but I don't really plant it for the bloom. The bloom is not the attractive part of it, to be honest. But that foliage is just a great contraster. See how it makes the purples more purple with that gray contrast in there. So it's a great plant to use kind of as a contrast. This is Dusty Miller. And there's a big one too. But if I wanted, I could always take some of these and maybe tuck it in between my pansy and my beet to help offset that color. See how nicely that looks in there? Kind of offsets the color. And I just love that they are tough as nails and animal resistant. So super for that. What other fillers did I have? That's kind of it. So once you kind of get it set how you want it to look and you're happy with it, that's when you're going to put the rest of your potting soil in. So my pot towards the front here, I've got it crammed pretty full, which people go, is that too full? Yes. I mean, I want my pots to look pretty from the minute I plant them. I don't want to wait a month, 2 months for it to fill in. So yes, I fill my plants full to begin with. I might lose one. It's very often when you're doing a potting with this many different plants in it, a pansy could die off. I could lose a beet. In that case, my pot's already full and I'm not going to notice if I have to pull one out. I'm not missing a lot. So I like to fill them full to begin with. So I don't have, if I poke around in here, there's not a whole lot of spaces, but there's some. So you're going to get your hands dirty. If you don't like that, wear gloves. Did you have a question? No, just doing your hair. So you kind of poke around there and see, where do I need soil? Well, I've got a big hole right here. So I'm just going to grab some soil. I'm going to fill that in. And you just kind of keep doing that all through the pot until you kind of tamp it down a little bit, not so hard, but tamp it down so that when you water it, that water doesn't just float right off. You're going to go through the whole pot and find those little holes and fill in. It's great for getting your hands dirty and in the soil, which is actually very beneficial for you. Got another hole over there. So I'm going to fill in over there. And I always make a mess when I pot. So if you don't like the mess, make sure you put a tarp or something down. But I kind of like the dirtiness of it, getting my hands in the soil, the smells. I think it's great. So you just go through the whole pot, find your holes, fill them in. Once you get it all set and you're happy with it, Then you always want to do a final watering in of it. And you're gonna, there again, because you've potted a little high, it's gonna be a little messy. So when you water it, there's gonna be some soil drip over the sides. That's okay. I'd rather have that than have my plants so low in the pot, I really can't see them or enjoy them. So I don't know what that was. Then you want to water in. This is our root and grow. This is for transplanting. It's a nice, there again, it's a product we've put together. It's an organic product. Super for any kind of transplanting you're doing, potting. If you have trees or shrubs that are stressed, this is a great product to use because it encourages new root hairs. And that's what we want. We really want these plants to root out fully so that when those really cold temperatures come, they're going to be fine with it. So using your root and grow, especially when you're first watering, is very, very important. And then I kind of use it every other week or so until I see, they're really taking hold. They're good. And then I can back off. But a great starter product. I really recommend you use it. Makes a big difference. And this you can use if you're doing trees, shrubs, flowers, houseplants. It's good for all of that. So you water in with that. And then you're just you're enjoying your pot. So a lot of people ask me, so with pots, it's either people tend to overwater or underwater. It's a challenge to get it right because, you know, you feel the top of it, you stick your finger in, you feel the top and you're like, oh, it's dry, I better water it. But if you were to go down 5-6 inches, it could be really wet down in there. So I like using a moisture meter because it kind of takes the guess out of things. You're just poking it around in a few different spots. I kind of try to hit different levels. So I can poke it all the way down to see if there's a lot of moisture down there, part way down, you know. So it's just really takes the guesswork. For 15 bucks, it takes the guesswork out of how do I water my pots. Because that's probably the most difficult thing. People either overwater or underwater. This time of year, people tend to overwater. Days are shorter, temperatures are cooler, plants aren't transpiring as much moisture out of the leaves and needles, so we don't need to water as heavily. Well, you want to water heavily, but you don't need to water as frequently. So using that moisture meter can make a big difference for you in getting that watering right. Couple other products that for this time of year, I'll mention so this is Flower Power. This is another one we've put together. So its numbers are 12, 48, 8. So that middle number, that 48, is the phosphorus. Phosphorus helps things root out and it helps things bloom. So if you've got a container that's like your pansies and stuff, you want them to bloom and keep blooming through the season, you use this product every 2 weeks. It's a water soluble. You just mix it up in your watering can and you just water the whole thing. You do that every 2 weeks. It's great for things that you want to bloom. Throw that in there. Also good for like your roses out in the yard during the season. If your roses are just kind of sitting there looking at you, sometimes you got to kick them in the pants, and using something with the high phosphorus just really kicks them. They go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to bloom, I'm supposed to bloom. So this is a good product, not just for container gardenings, but also for the yard as well. So I highly recommend those. And then some of the other things, just because insects are a reality of life, whether we like them or not. A few different products that work well. This is Furlough's indoor-outdoor spray. Great for aphids, mealybug, those kind of critters that get on plants, house plants and outdoor plants. This one's an aerosol. But super easy to use, very, very effective. So I like this one. These are I brought these up just because this time of year, it seems like the soil gnats go crazy. Whether it's indoors or outdoors, or you've had pots outdoors that you're going to bring indoors, maybe you want to winter them over. Those little tiny gnats that fly around your computer screens, you're reading a book, and they're driving you nuts. They're just a reality of life here, especially. Tends to get bad this time of year because I don't know if it's the cooler temperatures. They come through screen doors. You open a door, the insect comes in, and once they get going, they really get going. So the systemic granules, this kills the larvae, the little baby form of those gnats that are flying around. So you just spread it on your soil, lightly water it in, and it kills off the larvae. This traps, these are for the adults. So it's a yellow sticky trap. The adults are attracted to it, they fly to it, they get stuck. So these work too. Some people don't want to use a chemical, so they just use these, which is fine, but you've got to break that cycle of the larvae becoming the adults, flying around. So you got to break the cycle. The other thing that I find, gnats will get started if you're keeping your soil too moist, too wet, too long. They love that. So sometimes you back off on your watering. That can help as well because they're just pesky little critters. All right. Is there anything? Oh, here's another thought for you. So for those of you that don't want to fuss with putting a pot together, go with something already grown. It's already instantaneous color. You throw it on your patio. This one has the multis in it. It's got kind of a purpley pink, a yellow, and a bronze one. So it's already grown for you. If you've got a pot, you can just go, look at what I did. So that's for the easy, if you've got company coming and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a good way to go. I wanted to show you that. And I'll show you a couple other things that we have sitting on the table. So we just got these in yesterday. This is a Camellia. This is Monrovia's Ice Age Camellias. Most Camellias will not grow here. They can't take our cold winter. This Camellia goes down to like, I think, -10. Yep, -10. So it is a Camellia that can take our winter. It's evergreen. It does need a shadier spot in the yard. It can't take the full all-day hot sun. But going to take filtered light under a pine tree, east side of a house, somewhere it just doesn't get that real hot midday sun. This one is Spring's Promise, which is a dark kind of dark pink. Ken calls it watermelon. That's a pretty good description. Oh yeah. Yeah, these would grow easily in containers. Yeah. There's 3 different colors. There's this dark pink one, there's a light pink one, and there's a white one. And these guys bloom. The white one blooms between Thanksgiving and Christmas is usually when it blooms. So kind of cool. You get blooms out there when everything else is sticks in a bucket. The pink ones tend to bloom more into March, April, but kind of cool. You're getting that early season color out of them. Animal resistant. It has a real heavy waxy leaf to it, which makes it resistant for the critters. We only get them one time a year. They will only allow them ship. There's very specific shipping with them as far as sprays and blah, blah, blah. So we only get them one time a year. So when they're gone, they are gone. And I won't get any again until next October. But it's a really cool plant. Takes our cold. You can see, probably can't see it on the camera, but it's starting to set its buds. It's going, yeah, I'm ready. I'm setting my buds. So a real cool plant for here. We talked about the autumn blaze maple. Yes, ma'am. You want it, it would probably for a short period of time. It wouldn't be a more long term. Yeah, so if you could go a little bit bigger, you're better. But it would probably a year and a half would be fine in there. But autumn blaze maple, so they, you can't have a fall without a maple, right? So we just brought that up to show you and say, yay, it's fall, my favorite time of year. I love fall. My husband, not so much, but I love it. So, you can do your fall plantings for those wonderful guests you maybe have coming or just for yourself. I mean, what gives you more joy than planting a beautiful planter out there? So think about that. All right. Is there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Well, like I said, that's why I go through periodically and I just grab a big handful and I pull it out, roots and all. So I have it in at least half my containers have either ivy or the vinca in it. And I do when I'm pulling out and putting new plants in, I will just pull parts of that ivy or the vinca and just yank it right out of there. And it's fine. So yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. So that's, oh, repeat the question. I knew that. So he's asking, how do you amend your potting soil over time? So if you've got just annuals in there or thing, you know, you can always seasonally put new potting soil in there, refresh it. If you've got like this boxwood, say this was in here and you needed to refresh your soil, maybe it's sunk down so low. Basically what you're doing is pulling that back up. You want to dig it back up. You may cut some roots. That's okay. It'll be fine. So you just kind of, you pull out your perennial or your shrub, get some more potting soil, and you probably want to pull some of those roots and things out of there and refresh with fresh potting soil and replant so that it's nice back up at the level that it should be. And that's where your root and grow is hugely important because you've messed with those roots. You've probably pulled some of the roots off of it. It'll be okay, but that's where using the root and grow encourages, okay, I got to put out new roots again. So it just starts rerooting again. So you wouldn't have to do that probably maybe every 2 years or so, I would think. Sometimes, quite honestly, I get tired of my pots, and I'll just, no matter what I've got in there, I just pull them all out. I may take a boxwood and put it in another part of my yard, but I'll start with fresh plants again. And you're saying, well, you own a nursery. Of course you can do that. And you're right, I can. But I like to refresh periodically because it's like your indoor interiors. You don't keep the same colors for years on end. You redo it. And you should do that with your pots as well. Keep them fresh. Yes. Uh-huh. Till we get a hard frost. So, and hard frost here could be anywhere from the end of October, middle of November. We can have very mild falls, so you can actually go a long way with it. We do have frost cloth down there too, that if you're like, I just love this pot, I want to keep it going as long as possible, get some frost cloth. And that'll help with your minor frosts, those early frosts. By the time we get to end of December, January, February, it's all over. Either bring it inside, which would be an iffy proposition for a landhead. Yeah, start fresh. There you go. My kind of gal. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, so his question is planting fall vegetables. Yes, 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 yes. I love doing fall vegetables, whether it's lettuce, kale, beets, Swiss chard. You can even do broccoli, cauliflower. They will do excellent in containers. Well, I'm a lazy gardener, so I do everything from start. I don't have the patience to put the little seed in. The exception to that would be spinach. Spinach grows very well from seed, so I have no problem using that. Carrots, things like that. But I don't know. I kind of like seeing stuff there, but you could do seed or starts in soil. If you're doing starts, you want to get on it, or seed, you want to get on it right away because that time is compressing. But yeah, easily grow veggies in containers. And that way you can, I love it with lettuce because you can just go out and pick a few lettuce for dinner, have your salad. And the more you pick a lettuce, the more it's going to regrow. So it's amazing. Yeah, definitely. Anything else? No? Okay. Gosh, I feel like, because Ken goes on and I'm letting you guys out early. Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for braving the rain. I appreciate it. Thanks. Ah, Uh-huh. Right. Uh-huh. They set their main one. There won't be any more new ones, but if you look at this one, there's like 3 different sizes of buds in there. So you've got for mom, you probably wouldn't. But pansies, violas, things like that, I would definitely use it. Your mom's, you would do it earlier in the season. No, right. Yep. Thanks, guys. Oh, okay.